Hello, you amazing people out there, and welcome to the Amazing Action Comics podcast, where we are all about independent comics. I'm one of your hosts, Angel, with John Pepe.
Hey, we're back.
Oh my God, we're back. All right, so if you were here maybe a couple of minutes ago for the fiasco of us returning to live, holy shit. Yeah, it was a little bit of a fiasco. We're trying software on top of coming back from a 6 months, not even, like 4 months, 3 months hiatus. Life just happens, but we missed this too much that we needed to come back and get this rocking and rolling. So if you're on YouTube, you can probably see us right now. Welcome. And then I think we have something new. Let me see if I can work this out real quick. So I'm going to get into some spiels and stuff, but maybe it's right here. Yeah, I'll show that one. Look at this ticker. You want to see this ticker? Booyah!
Ooh.
So if you want to chat live, I believe I can still see the YouTube stuff. If you're chatting on YouTube, maybe I can see the comments. But if you want to chat live, you go to amazingactioncomics.onestream.live, and there's a page there, and you can actually chat with us live. I have the chat open now. But yeah, welcome to the Amazing Action Comics podcast. My name is Angel. Joining me is John Pepe. As always, he's the fellow historian, so he'll check all my bullshit when I'm wrong. And I'm sort of like the creative end. But this is an independent, small press, anything that's not part of the big two podcast. So we'll discuss everything from comics to movies to whatever we think that is crucial in that pop culture that's not part of sort of like that mainstream. But everybody just, starts off somewhere and then they become mainstream at some point. And then we stop talking about them. But yeah, so we have some reviews for this week, but a little bit of catch up over the last couple of months since we haven't been on. Usually we'll start off with some news, but I went down a rabbit hole today. So I was like, you know what? I want to just do a little memoriam for some of the famous people that have passed over the last couple of months since we haven't been on. And I literally just Googled celebrity deaths 2024. And holy shit, like a slew of people, just like all the way back to, I think, one of the very first ones that hit me was like earlier on this year. I think sometime in April or March was Carl Weathers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like when it like snowballed all down from there. I mean, there's a ton of people from like Broadway and stuff like that, but like, growing up with like, certain movie stars and watching them on the TV screen. I mean, I think there's not one person in the world that hasn't seen Rocky, at least. And he's been in a bunch. I just saw Predator yesterday, and he was in that famous scene, and just Arnold Schwarzenegger just clashing arms and watching two big biceps on the screen. And then we were talking about him today for some reason, him being on, like he was a comedian, like he had good comedic timing too. He was in with the movie with Adam Sandler.
Yep.
What was it? Nicky something.
Little Nicky.
Little Nicky.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then, all right. So then I just kept going, creeping up, and the more recent ones. So you got James Earl Jones.
I know.
So, I mean, the first time I saw him that I can remember was in Conan.
Yeah.
And then most, famously for his voice of Darth Vader, which is crazy because reading the news of him selling his voice to Disney for just perpetuity and for all of life. It's just we'll probably be dead by the time they make another movie and hear his voice off of there. But the kiddies of the kiddies will have his voice. More recently, Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
Dude, I turned around and I told my wife, I said, yo, Chris Christopherson passed away. She goes, who's that? I said, are you freaking kidding me? I said, if you don't know his music, at least you've seen him in the movies.
Yeah.
And I was like, you remember Blade, right? You remember Whistler? Yeah. And she's like, oh, no, yeah, really him? And he's been in a bunch of stuff. I saw a movie recently. I don't know if you saw the movie with Mel Gibson called Payback.
Oh, yeah.
He was in that. He was like the main top boss in that. So, yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff. Who else? Dame Maggie Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So more recently from the Harry Potter film. So you know her from there. John Amos.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
From Good Times all the way to Coming to America, Mr. McDowell.
To Beastmaster, you're right? Original Beastmaster. He's in that. Yeah.
He was topless in that one too, right?
Yeah.
And then John Ashton.
Yeah.
So Beverly Hills Cops. Was he in another 48 Hours?
It's a good question. I know I've seen another 48 hours. I can't tell you anything about the movie because it just was
Him.
so lesser than the first one. But he was just in Beverly Hills Cop 4. They
I
did.
know, which is crazy. Both of them were, and
Yeah.
I mean, they both aged, but it was still. I mean, just to see them back after so much time,
Mm-hmm.
and not to miss a beat with their comedic timing, was fantastic. But yeah, I mean, everybody's aging out. We were in the office today talking about, who's probably going to be the next big hit, and I was like, listen, as much as I don't want it, I'm thinking probably Clint Eastwood
Mm-hmm.
because he's
Yeah.
up there.
He's
But
up
then I
there.
turned around and I said, you know what? That son of a bitch will probably outlive everybody just to spite
Just
everyone.
out of spite. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And whatnot. But yeah, quite a few people that and then we've had people in the comic industry
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, it's been a crazy year,
I
and it
think
feels like
the big one for me in the comic industry was John Cassidy. That was really tough. Too young, tremendously talented artist. Did a ton of indie work, as well as work for the big two. But that one was the one I think that hit pretty hard. That was just shocking.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just it's just going to keep happening,
Of course.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we'll try to just give everybody a shot. But you know what? They're all up there doing their thing.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful. All right, cool. Gang, we haven't been around for a minute, but we're back and we're looking at, a new day and same kind of time. So we're here to be Mondays. I think it was really challenging just trying to get comics on Wednesday and then trying to get the reviews out on Thursday. So we're looking at, the Monday after, which gives us enough time to really digest the comics and then give you some really good feedback on what we found in these reads. So we do have some reviews for this week. But before we get there, just a couple of quick shout outs to some stuff that I've actually been reading over the last couple of months that might be worth checking out. So, Kill All Immortals from Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Really, really, I mean, it's about these Vikings that are immortal. You get to find out how they became immortal through time. And basically, you have this one woman who brings in this reporter into the family, doing a story specifically on her. They don't like it. They want to kill him. She's like, no, and all hell ensues in regards to her trying to save him and not get killed in the process, but trying to find a way to be able to kill her family because they are immortal in that respect. Really good. Free Agents,
Some
just
gorgeous
superhero
artwork in Kill All
art,
Immortals, by the way. Yeah,
dude,
that artwork is
so good.
beautiful. Yeah.
And the pacing it is just fantastic. That every time I get an issue, it moves you along in the story really quickly.
Mhm.
And I think it's going on issue either 4 or 5 right now, but just a really good, solid read. Just fun to play with. I've been big on. I love that Image is bringing the superhero stuff back, sort of like an homage to the '90s, but not really. I think the only one that's doing that is the Tony Fleece book, The Local Man, because it
Mm-hmm.
has that flip side where it has like that '90s art style. But then it has sort of like the modern storytelling on the other side as well. Free Agents, really solid for Image Comics. Blood Squad 7, another Image, superhero book. And I think there's sort of like some crossover in some of these books. So there might be like a universe that's being created, but sort of like in the background right now,
Well,
which is
one of
cool.
the things we reviewed Blood Squad 7 when the first issue came out. One of the things I love about what that book is trying to do is be a continuity patch for Youngblood.
Yes.
For the when Rob Liefeld left Image, he took his toys with him, just like Jim Lee did when he went, and brought Wildstorm over to DC. But all those Image books at the beginning were very interconnected. It was a shared universe, and so what Joe Kelly is doing here is kind of created a new team to take the place of the old Youngblood, and now this is a modern version of that team, like a legacy thing. So I think the hook on Blood Squad 7 is great, and in some ways it does sort of now connect a little bit to Local Man, because I think Local Man's used some of those Image characters as well. So it's sort of like I like that Image is kind of leaning back into their shared continuity a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I'm really digging what they're doing. So, and then one that's not a superhero book, The Falling in Love on the Path to Hell. Jim Duggan, who's really good. Well, I guess he grew up in the shop. He
Mm-hmm.
shopped at the Joker show when he was younger, and I believe he's gonna be visiting.
There's rumblings that yes, he will be
Rumblings.
at a local comic shop that we both love and support. Really cool. Also, is that in the next issue of Falling in Love on the Path to Hell, he's got a little column in the back where he writes about riding to the Joker's child on his bicycle from Ridgewood to Fair Lawn, New Jersey as a kid to get his comic books. So that's really cool. Yeah, with Comic-Con coming up in a couple weeks, he takes that as an opportunity to come back to his roots. So there might be some sort of pop-in, we'll say.
Yeah, which would be cool. And I'm really enjoying that book. I mean, I read the first issue and I was just like, I really like this idea of people dying, going to a place of death, and then being able to die again. Because remember that book, Reborn? I think that was Greg Capullo.
Yeah.
And probably, I want to say Scott Snyder, but I could be wrong.
It was Mark Miller, right?
Oh, Mark Miller. Okay.
I think it was a Mark Miller. I could be wrong.
I'll find out.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that was one of these things where I was like, all right, if you die and go to the afterlife and you die again, then where do you go? And obviously there's nothing after you die twice off of that. So those are the ones that I've actually, they're probably worth picking up that I've enjoyed over the last couple of months. And I'm happy because stuff is starting to pick up again. And we're starting to see a lot more books come through. And I think that's where we're going to probably be a little bit more selective because I think there's been more than 5 each week over the last couple of weeks in regards to like independent books. And I promise I'm going to try to stretch myself and read stuff that's out of my zone, just so that we can bring you a little bit more diversity when it comes to the reviews. But definitely, I'm always going to be leaning towards the superhero stuff that that independent stuff is bringing. Even the Nemesis stuff that came back out, and Nightclub. Holy, how could I forget about Nightclub?
Nightclub too, yeah.
That's on to its second iteration, and it's been great. So I love it. Is there anything else that you've been reading?
Butcher's Boy was a really cool 4-issue horror themed mini from Dark Horse. I think I reviewed the first issue. That wrapped up really well, real tight, good 4-issue series. I can't speak enough about Farrell. Absolutely love Farrell. Those guys are too good at what they do, man. I know not your wheelhouse, but boy, it is amazing. Let's see. Golgotha Motor Mountain. That was another one that finished out really nice. I really like that, the weirdness of that. The Crying Boy from Keen Spot. I think I reviewed the first issue of that. That was pretty terrifying in its conclusion. That's the thing, man, is that like not only is Image and Dark Horse still out there doing their wide range of titles and genres, but you do have Bad Cave, Keen Spot, Oni's really up their game, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I really just love to see this wealth of stuff from publishers. Titan's doing some amazing stuff with the Conan and Robert E. Howard license. Mad Cave, again, they brought back Dick Tracy, Flash Gordon, like there's sort of this whole retro bonanza. So yeah, really good stuff out there from a lot of different indie publishers, which is fantastic.
Yeah, there's plenty in all different types of genres. So definitely get yourself out there, and we'll try to bring you as many as we can over the next couple of weeks. As we get into holiday season, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I was so glad that my wife decided not to decorate for Halloween this year. We have a tool shed in the back, and a tool shed is meant for tools. But no, it is, I think, 30 buckets of just holiday stuff. So we just have to switch out. It has, and I mean, every holiday. You got St. Patrick's, you got Easter, you got Valentine's, then you've got the major holidays, you got Thanksgiving. Then she has seasons, spring and summer. Oh my God. I make fun of it, but holy crap, there's so much. And at one point we had 2 Christmas trees, so we had like 15 bins dedicated to just Christmas stuff, which we still have. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. All right, cool. Let's get into it. We do have a little bit more news. Actually, you know what? I want to talk about one more thing because I know we spoke about it. And another thing that we used to do on here is we used to talk about movies that were adaptations of books that we've read. Now, back in the 90s, yeah, listen, to me, it was probably one of the best, from book, from material to movie adaptations. Yes, it took some liberties, but it was really, really, really close. And I'm talking about the 90s Brandon Lee, The Crow. Freaking awesome.
From 30 years ago this summer, yep.
Yeah. From soundtrack to visuals,
To
I think,
performances
yeah,
across
performances.
the board. Yeah.
I think the big thing about that movie that really took me was sort of like the hook of the performances. Like you believed in his pain.
Mm.
They took the liberties with, how she died, what happened. But when he came back to avenge her, the bewilderment of what he was going through, on top of the pain that he was feeling when he was going through that flashback sequence, like he was seeing it in his mind but feeling it in his body too. That just took me over the edge.
Yeah.
So
And
why do I bring that up? Go ahead.
and I would say just the liberties work for that movie. I mean, that's
Yes.
the thing is that in order to bring that comic material to a mainstream audience, you do have to soften the blow a little bit. And
Mhm.
I think that the movie does that really well. So the movie really does stand on its own as a textbook perfect adaptation, liberties and all, because those liberties absolutely work for the movie that is being presented. A phenomenal movie, great movie. And really, that's it. That's the end of the conversation, right, Angel?
No, but here's the other thing, right? The movie's called The Crow, and The Crow is a really key part of the movie because that's how he comes back, but
Mm-hmm.
that's also how he maintains his life
Mm-hmm.
here. So there's this connection between him and the crow, keeping him here in the realm of the living. Fast forward 30 years, and we get another adaptation. Listen, the movie itself, standalone, if it wasn't called The Crow, was great. I actually liked it. I liked the performances. Skarsgård gave a great performance. He did the best that he could do with the material that he had. I think the biggest problem that I had with it was one, the disconnect to emotion in that movie.
Hmm.
So a lot of the times, and we have to suspend disbelief in a lot of things that we're seeing when it comes to like adaptations like this. Like it's just not going to happen. But for me, when someone dies and goes into another realm of they don't know where they are, or they figure out that they're dead, and there's no visceral reaction to that. There's just like, oh, okay, let me go do this next thing. But I'm
Hmm.
fucking dead. I'm dead. Everything that's in my life is. It was just really weird that they didn't spend a minute or 2 minutes like they did in the previous film with
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Lee to have sort of like, all right, where's the sense of loss? Where's the sense of what the hell's going on kind of thing. So I think that got me disconnected. And then the crow had nothing to do with the movie at all. There were like thousands of crows, and his crow just okay. You know what? I'm gonna take that back. His crow showed him where to go. That's pretty much it. Just fly this way, fly that way, go that way, kill that person. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Yes, it probably should have been called The Crow. It took more liberties than the movie 30 years previous to it.
Hmm.
So, but like I said, if it wasn't called The Crow and it was called something else, um, then you wouldn't have known it had anything to do with the material, to be honest. But it's a good standalone movie by itself. But
No.
to be called The Crow and be in that mythos,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a tough swallow.
Yeah.
So,
I do say I do which Skarsgård is this? This is Bill Skarsgård,
yeah,
right?
Bill
Yeah.
Skarsgård.
He is like amazing in just his range, because he can do the heavily makeup stuff like Pennywise, and I can't wait to see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Nosferatu remake. He just
yep.
looks terrifying in that, but he's also proven he can play like normal guy. If you've
Mm-hmm.
seen that movie Barbarian, which is really an interesting film to see, he's just normal guy in that, and he's really good and really convincing. And then the other, now he's in action. He can do action too, because the action beats in The Crow, from what I've seen, or he's good. He's carrying it. He has another movie that came out a couple months ago called Boy Kills World.
Right.
That is
Oh, yeah, sorry.
awesome. He is so good in that. He's deaf and mute in the movie, and all of his he has a head voice, though. He's got a through line, running through his head. You hear his thoughts,
Right.
but his thoughts are from a video game that he used to play as a kid before he went deaf and mute. And it's H. John Benjamin. It's Bob from Bob's
Yeah, yeah,
Burgers
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
Archer.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
that's the running, thought through his head as he's killing people, and great creative ways. Yeah, if you haven't seen Boy Kills World, I highly recommend that. And again, it's an example of, oh, this was its own thing, and this works as its own thing. They didn't just try and take that story and slap a branding on it, right?
Gotcha. Yep.
Like what you're saying is with this Crow. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've said my piece. I'm going to leave it alone for the rest of the year or the rest of my life.
Yeah, I
And I
haven't
watched
seen
it
it.
alone, and I was like so angry throughout the entire movie. I just hated feeling that way. And like I
Yeah.
said, it's not the performances. You work with what you have, but yeah. All right, cool. So
We're gonna
let's
see
move.
it, but yeah, we're holding off on that. So
All right, yeah, you'll see it.
yeah.
You'll kind of feel the same. All right, moving on to books four. This is October 2nd. We had quite a few, so I know John has more than I do. So I'm going to let him start because I think we have about 4 books total, and we've got a good variety of books. So yeah, why don't you start with the first one?
Yeah, so the first one I'm gonna do is so it's funny we mentioned how a lot of indie creators, they toil, they work really hard in the indie comic scene so that they can break into the big two. But this is a book that's written by a guy who kind of did it in reverse. He got his background in Hollywood. He was a production assistant director. He worked on movies with Richard Donner, and then used those connections to kind of break into mainstream comics and did a lot of work for the big two, most extensively DC, right? And then he decided, okay, I've had enough playing in other people's sandbox. I want to create my own, and I want to create a whole bunch of sandboxes, and I want to bring a lot of great artists over to play with me with these new toys that we're all going to create. So that man is named Jeff Johns, very prolific creator, great writer, and really does understand, I think, a lot of the dynamics and fundamentals of character development and storytelling. There's no doubt that his work, especially with DC, rich in nostalgia, just loves that stuff, that history. So to see him, take his own thing, his own ideas and imaginations, create these own worlds with other artists is really good, because in a lot of ways, one thing I always had was that not every story he wrote stuck the landing. But right now with what he's doing, because he doesn't have to bow down to editorial decree, let's say, he gets to do what he wants to do. And what has been coming out from his Image imprint called Ghost Machine has been some phenomenal stuff. Rook Exodus with Jason Fabok is really cool, hardcore sci-fi. He's got his shared universe, the unnamed universe, right, with Geiger and Redcoat, and Junkyard Joe is part of that. Redcoat is one of my absolute favorite things. He's doing that with Brian Hitch. That just wrapped up its first storyline. I love that series. Geiger is still chugging along with Gary Frank on art, and they're just still doing great work there. And last week saw the release of their horror title, Hyde Street. And so Hyde Street is its own separate universe, right? It's a horror universe that they have. And so you have your superhero universe, your sci-fi universe, and your horror universe right now in this Ghost Machine imprint. And Hyde Street is with Ivan Rice. And Ivan Rice has always been one of my favorite artists as well. He puts some tremendous detail in his work for the big two. But boy, when he's doing his own stuff, he's really knocking it out of the park.
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
So he's got some really great, they got some great ideas going here. This is sort of like Twilight Zone meets the comic book mail order catalog meets Mortal Kombat. I want to say, because Hyde Street is this side street that exists in every small town. And if you happen to be unfortunate enough to wander down Hyde Street, it is because you've done something wrong in your life and you have some atoning to do. And you are greeted by any number of these denizens of Hyde Street. And the two that we focused here is Mr. X-Ray and that little Boy Scout guy called Pranky. And basically there's a scorekeeper in this world of Hyde Street. And the more souls you take that wander into Hyde Street, the more points you rack up. And
Huh.
then what happens when you rack up all the points, right? What is the end game for that? So there's a little bit of a mystery in here. So basically, you get that set up. You have this old woman who wanders into Hyde Street, and she gets help by Pranky to cross the street because he's a little Boy Scout guy, right? But he's not a good Boy Scout guy. But she's not a good person, so he basically helps her face her ultimate end. And she's not willing because obviously she's not a good person. And then you start to see the dynamics because what Pranky's doing is he's taking these victims from other people. So he takes this woman from, like, this was supposed to be Mr. X-Ray's kill, right? And Pranky steals her from him. And then you kind of get into the background of who Mr. X-Ray is. So you get his story and how he wound up in Hyde Street. And he's the guy that made all those weird comic book mail order things, X-Ray specs and what sea monkeys, right? Except in here they're called piranha people, which is really funny. And he has no problem ripping kids off for a few bucks because he knows the X-ray specs don't work. He knows the piranha people are just brine shrimp, that they don't have scepters and sit on thrones and have castles and things like that. So it was really kind of cool to see that you had this like 1966 Madison Avenue, it's only like a Mad Men kind of vibe. This guy who he's there to make the dollar, he's there to make the money, and it's that kind of lands him in Hyde Street, where he is now in this role of someone who is taking sinners, to their final end. And again, there's this competition between not just Pranky and Mr. X-Ray, but all these other really weirdly named people, because you don't see them, but you see their names at the end because you get the tally, you get the scorecard at the end.
Right.
And so it's just sort of this melee for souls. Who's going to take the most souls and who's going to kill them in the most creative ways? So I think there's a lot of room for this. Again, it's sort of like a little Twilight Zone.
Who's running the game?
What's up? The scorekeeper. That's all we know. This is the scorekeeper.
Have they introduced the scorekeeper?
Just by name.
Wow.
Yeah. So this issue, you get the setup, you get the peek into Mr. X-Ray's origin. Next issue promises Pranky's origin, how Pranky wound up in Hyde Street in his role. And then there's also a one-shot called Devour. So I think what you're going to have is you're going to have your ongoing series, but then you're going to have a series of one-shots by different creators that are going to explore some of the other people on the scorecard.
Oh, cool.
So I think it's really cool. It's really ambitious. It's really different, obviously, from the rest of Ghost Machine's output, but it's also different enough from everything else that's out there. We're seeing a big boom now, like Oni brought EC Comics back with Cruel Universe and Epitaphs of the Abyss, and those are anthology series, just like Creepshow is back for a third volume with anthology series. And this is a running through line that has little stories kind of woven into it. So it's sort of a combination of that superhero arc aesthetic, but with this sort of horror anthology aesthetic. And you kind of look at like Mr. X-Ray or Pranky as your horror hosts for the proceedings, but they're actively involved. And again, I cannot speak enough about Ivan Rice's artwork. There's something about these creators where you see how much they put into their mainstream work, but with the big two. But once they get to do their own creator-owned stuff, they really go all out. They don't hold back. And
they don't have the boundaries.
That's one of the things I've been loving about this Ghost Machine imprint. And now, again, Jeff Johns is always a very forward-thinking guy. He's a multimedia guy. So I'm sure a lot of this stuff is being lined up to be pitched, to be adapted. Let's hope that what we're seeing on the page, the majority of that does make it through to the live action adaptation. And I think that's part of the goal because these creators are very active and have a stake, they're shareholders in this imprint, in this Ghost Machine, and whatever happens after that. So
nice.
They announced it a Ghost Machine as an imprint about a year ago at Comic-Con, and already now with these 4 titles under the belt, with more on the way, I think that they're on a roll. I think they're doing really good.
Cool. All right, awesome. So Hyde Street, check it out. That's part of the Ghost Machine, right?
That's the Ghost Machine imprint from Image. Yep.
Yeah,
but again, it's its own little thing. So you don't have to read Rook to read this. You don't have to read Geiger or Redcoat to read this. So yeah.
All right, cool. Moving on. So I'm next. So back in the 90s, the early 90s, you had these guys break off from mainstream, Marvel and DC to create their own imprint because they were just frustrated and wanted to be able to, work creatively and do the things that they wanted to do. So They created Image Comics, and one of the founders was Todd McFarlane. So I know I say this story all the time, but it is absolutely effing true. Because it wasn't the first book that was launched in Image. The first book in Image was Youngblood. So it was a team title by Rob Liefeld, which I also got, but I didn't get it with my own money. So I started working at Sam Flax in the city, got my first paycheck, got my first comic, and it was Spawn #1 for $1.95. And yeah, that's what? It's how many years later? That's 30 something years later, right? Holy
Mm-hmm.
crap. Yeah, they're getting up there. We're getting up there.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much bought every single, like, because it was the extreme age with like all the bulky muscles. Everybody had a team because you had Youngblood, you had Cyberforce, you had Wildcat, you had Stormwatch. So they all had their 5 people on the team, and then Spawn just kind of stood out along with Savage Dragon and Shadowhawk because they were just themselves. And to this day, it's technically the longest running independent or creator owned comic out there. And it's expanded. So now you have the Spawn universe. So you've got Gunslinger Spawn, you've got Scorch, you got King Spawn, which is another retelling of Spawn, just sideline stories. Sam and Twitch, dude, that book is great. It is, I mean, it's a mini, but it's a true detective story, and I'm really really digging it. It's got, I believe it's Simon Kudansky's art in it, and it works so well for that book because it's so dark. Recently, you have Misery, which is the child of it's Wanda's child. What was her name? Cheyenne, and Terry's child, who has powers now too. So she has her own book that's been pretty good as well. Um, and then you have Rat City, which is not it's not Al Simmons. It's some other dude in another timeline or another dimension that is being haunted by Al Simmons' spirit, and he's wearing like Spawn armor kind of thing. Yeah, so you have this entire universe of books that have just come out, and Todd McFarlane is doing none of them. Because well, you know what? Listen, he's got his toy line now and stuff
Yeah.
like that, so he's kind of overseeing everything. But it's really cool to he hasn't drawn for a long time. I believe he was writing or actually doing part of the scripts or script layouts for a really long time. And I think at some point you do have to give up the reins because there's what's going on with Barberi's art, the current writers on Spawn and stuff like that are bringing in these fresh new stories, which are pretty cool. And we're getting these minis that are coming out with sort of like the origins of certain characters. I think we had a 3-issue mini recently with Monolith. It was okay. I like the character, and the origin was okay. But recently we got the Violator, first appearance in Spawn #1, and probably one of his best villains to date off of this. So we get to actually, I think this was going to be a 3-issue mini as well, but we kind of get to see the very beginning and origins of the Violator. His original name was Basil, and he was supposed to be merged, I guess is what they call it, because they're technically angels, merged with another character called Gloriana. And basically, all you have is sort of like these angels creating for God. So they're just creating matter. They're creating sort of like the planets and all. Like their job every day is just to create. It's a good like chunky 40 pages in here. I don't want to give away too much, but you kind of get to see the fall of Lucifer, who's the one is kind of enticing all of these angels to kind of come together. So you get sort of like this. We always knew from the very beginning of Spawn issue #1 that Malboja was, a head demon down in hell, and sort of like there was this war between heaven and hell, and this building of an army to the Armageddon, which is what Malboja was doing, was creating these Spawn characters that were going to be leaders for the army. So you get to see sort of like the Violator, his character, kind of have his fall from faith and how he gets enticed by a certain someone, and how he becomes the Violator towards the end of this comic. And it's different. It's funny because you're mentioning Hyde Street, and Hyde Street has characters that no one has ever seen, a brand new storyline that no one has ever seen. So sort of like the slow burn of that is going to happen over time. So like the reveal of characters. But here we have a 30 plus year old storyline and a character who's just, I mean, he's had books before,
Mhm.
but not an origin. So he's had his minis. And it's funny, like after 30 years, we're sort of getting an origin for this particular character. And so I think what they did in this particular book, which is give you like a really overall recap of, you know, what happened in the very beginning of time and how this particular character was affected and became who he was by the end of the book. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him over the next two issues because I know he had his issues with Malboja and not being promoted to like or becoming a spawn or whatever it was that he wanted to be the leader of his army in this particular thing. But the art is great. You got the scripted plot is by Mark and Draco, art by Peter Kowalski, and then lettering by Anwell Design. And then you got the creative director, Todd McFarlane. So he had really no input in regards to the story and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure he did. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool because if you see like it's like their bodies are just like these like armor and stuff like that. So they have this like spiral detail. I don't know if you can see it, but just really, really, really cool. And you could tell they were angels because they had wings and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, the art in here was great. The storytelling was great. The coloring was great. Definitely worth getting your hands on if you're a big Spawn fan, or if you want to know what the origin of Violator was. So Violator from Image Comics. Cool. I'm looking. Oh, it's actually one of six. So you got a 6-issue miniseries. So it'll be interesting to see where that heads.
And and Violator and Clown are the same thing, or are we going to learn that dynamic? I guess I get right.
Yeah, because he has to turn into that. I guess
Right.
Malboja's gonna give him. I'm just presuming because we see Clown in issue number 1, who turns into Violator.
Right. It's almost like Clown is like a skin suit for Violator.
Correct.
Which is really funny because Violator's pretty big, but Clown is like Danny DeVito size.
Yes.
And I always loved in the Spawn movie. And I always loved in the Spawn movie, the live action one, which we talked about a couple of years ago, that John Leguizamo was the Clown, and that guy who's colloquially known as Johnny Legs had to be on his knees the whole time. But he was great. I thought he was great in the movie, though, and I always loved that sort of juxtaposition of Violator's true form, but this gross clown that he can appear as on Earth. So that's going to be cool to find out how that actually went down.
Yeah, well, and hopefully, fingers crossed, because now supposedly Blumhouse still has, the production of the new Spawn movie that we're supposed to be getting. So, hopefully, I mean, I think it was great when it came out because that was another good adaptation of comic to movie. There was a lot of stuff that was really, really close, and they took liberties because of certain characters that they couldn't use because of licensing rights, unfortunately. But yeah, as close as you can get to sort of like the source material. I think it was ahead of its time because it needed probably another 5 more years for the CGI to catch up. If it would have waited that long, because I remember seeing it at the movies at like midnight with my brother, and like the costume, Michael J. White, and the costume and stuff like that, all that live action stuff was fantastic. And then you get to the end and you see Malboja, and you're like, what the fuck is this cheap ass CGI? Like it was bad. It was so bad that it was good.
I've always said the climax of that movie, when I saw that in the theaters with my friend Matt as well, it felt like you're watching someone play a video game and they're not letting you have a turn. You're forced to watch somebody play this video game. And so that's what I was felt. But that movie, I was surprised when we watched that a couple years ago. That movie still holds up. That's still a solid movie. There's still a really good movie there. And it still, after all this time, 30 years later, it still holds up.
It fell under the 2-hour time limit. I think at this point in day and age, because we're used to sitting down for more than 2 hours, I think if they would have stretched it out, because some of the parts felt really rushed, especially towards the end. Like that whole end sequence felt really rushed. I think they could probably fit it into like a 2.5-hour movie and make something really, really solid this day and age. But yeah, I mean, I could go on and on because it's still one of my favorites. I'm still reading it to this day. I mean, it's like on 356 or something, which is ridiculous. But yeah, check it out. Violator, Image Comics. All right, nice. You're up.
All right. So the other one that came out last week is from Oni Press, who I mentioned before. Oni's been doing a really good job of sort of expanding their output and delivering a really good product, really nice paper, good cardstock cover. And this is called Skin Police. I'm catching up too much light on there, but let's see. I just love the grossness of the
Yeah,
cover.
that is gross.
I love that the guy in the center there, very much a Mobius sort of face on there. Like the Mobius was the French artist Jean Girard, and just that viscera around him, with a little hand peeking through there. Yeah, so Skin Police. So this really intrigued me. This is written by Jordan Thomas, illustrated by Daniel Getty, colored by Jason Wordy, and lettered and logo designed by Jeff Powell, edited by Carl Ballers, and some design work by Winston Gambro. And again, like I said, this is Oni Press. So this I was really excited for. Even though this is one of those things, Angel, this is, I like a good contemporary story, but this takes place in the year 2176, which I will never see, so I really don't care about. But your backstory is that about 30 or 34 years earlier, there's a fertility pandemic, and black market clones are a big thing, right? However, so people can't have kids, so let's just buy a black market clone, or let's harvest my genetic material to make my own black market clone. However, cloning technology is not perfected, so these clones are very unstable. So when these clones hit a certain age range, they literally use the term, they pop, which means that first they start having these delusions that they are seeing basically demons where there are people, and then it all then they lash out against the demons, and then which would lead to a killing spree, and then once that killing spree is over, I guess they literally just explode. Hence the pop, right? So the pop, I think, is like a progression of madness, violence, and explosion. So they have created a duplicate identification and capture division. So these are the police task force, the DIC for short. And basically they are called the Skin Police, and they are tasked with when, they are able to know when someone's about to pop or is in the middle of an episode, and these Skin Police are sent out to neutralize the threat. And you're focusing on one, sort of veteran, grizzled, hardline cop who doesn't question what they do with these clones once they're captured. There's rumors that they just grind them up into paste, and that's protein paste that now the people eat. So like they call it the goop. And but he doesn't care. He's doing his job. He's got a wife. He's got a kid. There's a little speculation. Is this a natural kid? Because we're still in a little bit of this fertility epidemic, So I feel like there might be a nice reveal for his character down the road. And then of course he is training a rookie while his partner is laid up. So you get to kind of see him solo in an action sequence on a plane at the beginning, which was really cool, really well done, really establishes his sort of, almost a softer Judge Dredd type of guy, right? Just a no nonsense on the job. But again, he's got this family life, which, we don't see with Judge Dredd. So you get to see that sort of other side. And you kind of get to really see what happens to somebody when they're in the throes of this pop, the person that he has to neutralize on the plane. So it's a really good, exciting action beat to start off with. Some really cool, so imagery that you get to see there as this guy's sort of, this is basically how he sees the inside of the plane when he's in the middle of his madness episode, and you can see the cop going to get him. So really good stuff, really solid artwork by Daniel Getty. I really dug it. I dug the concept, and the fact that it took place, in 2176, it worked. It really worked within this world. It just felt all natural for this story that's being told. So I really like the dynamics. And there's also, you're not just going to be following this guy and his rookie partner, but there's also a rebellion and an uprising. to fight against the persecution of these clones. And you actually do have, like all good sort of superhero fiction, you have one of these mysterious rebels with a helmet and a red cape who's saving other, clones that are being chased after and stuff like that. So you have this other side of it. And I'm going to kind of put my predicting hat on now, because what you see of this other guy, he's kind of got a scarred face, but you can't see much under the helmet. It's almost like a Juggernaut helmet. I'm going to go out and say that the cop that we're following, he's a clone, but he also has another clone. And I think it's going to be like a Samaritan thing, right? On the two sides of the thing. So that's my speculation for this. And so it's going to be fun to go along for the ride. And if I'm right or if I'm wrong, I expect that the journey wherever this is going is going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, Skin Police, really weird, kind of gross, but also a really good adventure book.
Nice. All right, you've got one more, right?
I got one more. This is an older book. This is another Image, but the second printing and second issue of this came out this past week. So I wanted to kind of give this first issue a shot because I missed it the first time around. It's called Stand Still. It is written by Lee Loughrige and illustrated by Andrew Robinson. Lettering and design by Rob Tweedy. And what I really liked about this, Andrew Robinson is a really, really good artist. Lee Loughrig's writing I've read before, and he does a really good job. What I loved is that you get a real big, thick comic for $5, $4.99. It's 8 issues. Everything is double page spread. It's in a lot of cases it's panels across 2 pages, but everything reads across 2 pages.
Oh, cool.
So I think that's a really neat technique. Something Frank Miller did for 300, except that was full 2-page spreads with panels interspersed. So I just love that. It gives it a very cinematic feel. You really sort of get the widescreen treatment. So even things with a guy playing looking on a computer, that's pretty dramatic. It's pretty good. Yeah. So I really dug this. It's about a guy who has the ability to stop time and mess with people. And what's really cool is, while this guy himself might not necessarily be a good person, he's got a really solid moral center. So the horrible things that he's doing to people or making them do or think that they're doing when he freezes time, it's all for the greater good, because the people that he's doing this to are horrible people. So he's sort of got this really interesting moral center. But like the opening sequence is a great illustration where he goes into this biker bar, and just to sort of pick this fight, to get back at these guys for something that they had done, and he goes the lead one into kind of having all of these bikers attack him, and then the next thing this guy knows, that the lead biker that he goaded into this guy's standing there with his knife in his hand, and all his biker buddies are just slaughtered around him. And that's your setup. Like, that's your opening scene. That's your setup. And then you sort of learn a little bit more as to what's going on and how this guy is doing that. But in that first issue, there's still, plenty of room for mystery for the back 7 that they're going to do here. So yeah, I'm going to pick up the second issue. That also did sell out at the shop. So we're probably getting it on a reorder, or I'm going to, wait for a second print on that, since that first issue went to a second print. Seems like the response is really good on it. I like it. It's contemporary. It's got just a little touch of sci-fi with the ability to stop time and manipulate things around you, which is a concept I've always found fascinating as a fictional hook. Gorgeous artwork, really neat, innovative layout as far as doing everything across the double page spread. And I think you get a lot of bang for your buck. It's a heavy page count for the $5, and it's only going to be an 8-issue investment. So Stand Still from Image, Lee Loughrige and Andrew Robinson, really dug that first issue. So I'm glad they got that second issue, that second print out. You definitely go and check that out if you can grab one at your shop.
How does he manipulate time with a machine, or is he like?
He's got a little thing on his wrist.
Oh,
yeah,
he does. Okay.
Yeah. That's your little typical sci-fi. Look at my little glowy thing on my wrist.
Oh, we don't know where you got it from.
We don't know yet. We don't know yet. But someone's onto him. Someone's figuring it out. That's the guy at the computer.
Yeah, probably. All right, there you go, guys. So you got enough material to last you another week. So we definitely got some stuff coming out this week. What was I looking at that was interesting? I know I ordered something. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But there was some stuff coming out. I think Dynamite is launching a book. Are they doing Hercules? No, they're not doing Hercules. Somebody's doing something. I was like, ick. No, I don't want that. But yes, yeah, there'll be stuff out for next week. So we'll definitely be here next Monday at the same time for that. All right, cool. So, kiddies, if you like to be part of the show, if you're a creator, want to come onto the show, talk about anything that you got going on, then just visit amazingactioncomics.com. We'd love to have you on. There's a little form there. Just fill it out. John and I would love to have you on, talk about your project, and promote you and your project out there as well. Yeah, we also have some stuff going on. Really quickly, I just want to talk about this really quick. Mm-hmm. So let me come back here, come back here, come back here, come back here, and then here. Oh no, not that one. Yes. So Justin and I are both the co-founders for Amazing Action Comics, and we've been taking this sort of like hiatus to kind of step back and reassess everything that we have, and we've just been like brainstorming like crazy. So we've got some stuff in the works. I want to say what it is, but I don't want to say what it is because it's happening. I've been reading some scripts that he's been sending me, and we're going into a really happy place. So probably by the end of this month, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about what we got going on. But I'll definitely be at IC3, which is next year, which is an independent creative Comic Con. So it's just independent, small press, and it's a convention just for independent creators. I got into it. I've got a table, so we're gonna have some amazing action comic stuff going on over there. As it gets closer, I'll give you the information for that. It'll definitely be on the website as well. I believe it's in Connecticut. It's a Connecticut university, and they have like this whole floor layout. It's their second year doing it. Last year was so popular that they actually had to expand it for this year. So there's going to be a ton of creators everywhere. I'm really excited about that. But just want to let you know that Justin and I just been putting our brains together, and we've got some really cool stuff that we're looking at bringing down the line. But stay up to date on everything that we've got going on at amazingactioncomics.com there, because we love to have you guys on board for what we've got coming down in the future. As always, please support your local comic shop, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we love. John, where do you get your comics from?
Well, I get my comics at The Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. 35 years and counting, The Joker's Child has been bringing comics to the people consistently every week. The more comics they make, the more comics we sling over at The Joker's Child. And another cool thing you can get at The Joker's Child, I don't know if you watch Angel's Facebook page, his Angel Comic Art Facebook page, but Angel puts all this great artwork up, and a lot of that artwork, folks, is available for you to buy at The Joker's Child. Take a little piece of Angel Santiago home with you by buying some of his hard-earned artwork, which you could definitely get at The Joker's Child, along with all your other good comic goodies.
Oh, thank you for the shout out there, bro. All right there, kiddies. That's all that we have for you this week. So please, until next time,